All right, so here we have Necrits video, sad news from the Riot MMO. It's just like that. Just like that.
I really should change the title of the video, shouldn't I? So, it happened. Finally!
It's funny because our community, our little Discord community, has been like so annoyed by the title of that video. So if he does change it, we win, right? We do win, right? Because it's not already done.
After many years, we got some news on Riot's MMO. But it turns out to be that the MMO is taking 18 steps back in order to make one step forward. So, in case you missed it,
It's a weird number that he chose, 18, 2018, 18 months from start.
So known as Tryndamere, gave
I'm gonna
us
just start doing
news
that.
on Riot's MMO
Big conspiracy
in the form
theory
of a tweet. Which is kinda poetic, because just like Ghostcrawler used Twitter to announce Riot's MMO, well now, Tryndamere is using Twitter to announce that they are resetting it. Which
to unannounce it, basically.
to many meant that Riot's MMO is essentially dead. But thankfully, that's not the case at all. Although there are quite a few flags sticking out that tell us that the future of this project will be difficult. So, let's dive right into it. Hey all, we know many of you are hungry for news about the MMO project, and we really appreciate your patience and the incredible support you've shown us so far. I'm writing to update you today on where we are at. And before anyone panics, yes, we are still working on the game.
I think he's going to go into this, but I think just even having to say, yes, we're still working on the game is kind of a scary thing. But I mean, I think a lot of what they're doing here is canceling out the Ghostcrawler stuff, where Ghostcrawler said, we'll cancel the game before we release a bad game. I think if you look into the wording used by Trin in this post, he says a lot of stuff that kind of blatantly contradicts what Ghostcrawler said.
Know that when they have to announce that they are still working on it, things are gonna get scary. After a lot of reflection and discussion, we've decided to reset the direction of the project some time ago. This decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. This is actually something that takes great
It's the 2023 reset we spoke of.
And big props to Riot.
We speculated
for
this
going
in January
through
of
with
last
this
year.
Decision. Whenever you get a AAA game that comes out as a flop, in most cases, unless it was rushed out, it's because the game was following a vision that simply didn't work. A good example of this would be Immortals of Avium. A game that sounds interesting on paper, but if your vision is to swap guns with hands, what's really the point? In this case, what the studio needs to do is to figure out what doesn't work, and they need to pull the plug on it before it eats too much resources.
What wasn't working
there
though?
is nobody wants to do that. In a similar way, it feels like the original vision of Riot's MMO didn't work, which meant that there was a high risk of the MMO going up in flames on release. So they had to do a really scary thing.
And Riot does not release games that they think are not going to do well. They just cut them and they burn them.
Go again. However, that doesn't mean that the MMO is starting from zero. And we'll get to that in a moment. Before that, Tryndamere gave us one more line that—
And League of Legends is still around 15 years later and is the most successful MOBA out there, right? So there's a reason they didn't cut that one. Can you imagine if League of Legends just wasn't fun and they cut that initially? And then there's just no games. It'd be just Riot. It'd be Riot. We would just be Riot.
That managed to split the entire MMO community. The initial vision just wasn't different enough from what you can play today. We don't believe you all want to play an MMO you've played before with the Runeterra coat of paint. To truly do justice to the potential Runeterra and to meet the incredibly high expectations of players around the world, we need to do something that truly feels like a significant evolution of the genre. The thing here is, we don't believe you all want to play an MMO you've played before with the Runeterra coat of paint.
This is where I disagree with Necrit.
Is that true though? Because when you ask around, you'll find out that's exactly what people want. Me included.
Ask around where though? Like if he's asking around in his classic WoW guild, yeah, they probably want Runeterra with classic WoW. if you're asking around the majority of gamers and specifically non-MMORPG gamers, I am an MMORPG gamer, or boomers. I am a boomer, okay? But it's a vision thing, right? Do we want the same old game that we've had for 20 years? That's actually still very successful. They just released the numbers. They have over 7 million subscribers right now actively. It's a good game. People enjoy playing it. Or do we want to compete with that thing that is still doing very well? Or we can make something that is the next iteration of that, that's going to be even more successful, welcome in a whole new generation of MMO gamers, as well as include the old gamers, and develop this new future-proof. Future-proof is like a R&D marketing buzzword of all time, but you want to future-proof the game, right? So that people are going to play it for years and years to come, instead of trying to pull half of the people from World of Warcraft, who also have the sunk cost fallacy, and they're probably never going to leave because they're stuck in that. I don't think anyone's going to leave WoW ever. We need the new gamers, the new generation. Big rant for his opinion is not everyone's opinion. And my opinion is not everyone's opinion, but I think the majority of people want something new and fresh.
I highly disagree with this statement. But I am aware of the fact that sometimes what people really want is different from what they think they want. Not every time the MMO community is absolutely aware of that, but there is a whole another onion hidden behind what Tryndamere mentioned here. An onion that has many layers where none of the layers are good or bad.
I hope he doesn't twist this into like, oh, but maybe it still will be World of Warcraft with Runeterra paint. And I don't know like how anyone could like actually say that they really actually genuinely want that. I don't understand that.
Which is why the MMO is in a bit of a dangerous place right now. Take for example the current state of MMOs. For many years, WoW stayed as the king of all MMOs. For a time, Final Fantasy managed to overtake them, but
for about 6 months.
Somehow, WoW always managed to bubble up to the surface. And in my opinion, it's not because WoW would be this godly game. It's because the competition is wax. I'm being a bit too harsh for the joke of it. I mean,
there's been a ton of games that have released the same game as WoW, just with a new coat of paint. And there's also many that had big IPs behind them too. I don't know, Star Wars The Old Republic comes to mind, which was basically at its core a WoW clone that also did storyline really well. But that game still didn't succeed because it was World of Warcraft with a new coat of paint. That's just history. People need to learn how to like follow history. Guild Wars 2 is really good, but also very similar to WoW in many ways. And not in the ways that they're not similar to WoW, also is kind of hit or miss with some of the fan base.
Guild Wars has an excellent setting and the fantasy delivery. Final Fantasy has an excellent story from what I've heard. But WoW has this one thing called loyalty, which is a nonsensical emotion that somehow beats everything else. And you know what can beat loyalty? Loyalty to an even bigger game. Which is why the Riot MMO was always seen as a guaranteed success if they happen to make a traditional MMO. The thing here is...
Who said that? I mean, I'm not gonna get like upset, but like it is an opinion piece, right? There's a lot of everyone said, or we all assumed, or we all and everyone, when I don't think that is the majority. I think there are people who feel that way, and I think but I do think it's pretty apparent that a lot of the people don't even know they want an MMO. Or a lot of people who are playing MMOs don't even realize they're playing MMOs right now because MMO is just such a blurred genre at this point. Like, Destiny 2 is actually one of the largest games ever, and that's at its core an MMO. It might be a hub-based MMO, but it's an MMO. So I don't think everyone or we all assume that WoW Classic with Runeterra paint is a good thing or going to be better just because of the IP. Is it really good to make game that keeps players via loyalty rather than just being a good game? I don't know. I mean, I don't think people have loyalty to the Riot MMO yet. I think they have loyalty to the IP, but the people who are loyal to the IP are also League players. I don't think Riot wants to just make an MMO for League players. They want new people. Because if they were just making it for League players, they could just keep updating League. They don't need to invest all this money into an MMO. They would, like, you want to, they're trying to expand the audience, right? And grow their market, not just only have the people loyal to the IP. And that's why Classic WoW, while good, is only available or only really there for people who have that nostalgia or really into Classic WoW. But that base is not going to grow. And new people aren't coming into WoW Classic. There probably was some people that came into WoW Classic fresh, but it wasn't like the majority. And if there was no nostalgia there, they wouldn't have made WoW Classic. But yeah, like WoW combat doesn't appeal to the majority of gamers. They don't want this minority game. This isn't supposed to be a small game. I mean, Ghostcrawler said it best. If you're going to go free to play, it's because you're looking to appeal to a massive audience. And that's why a lot of the MMOs have failed that are sub-based, because they didn't have enough people for subs, and then they went free to play, but their audience wasn't large enough. So then they had to start putting in other things, and whales, it's a nightmare. But for Riot's game to succeed, it needs to appeal to a mass market.
The other MMOs
is going to be like a 3-hour React video.
Advantage, which is why they are forced into experimenting with new mechanics. That's why Ashes of Creation is heavily investing into the social systems, which are not necessarily the best for the casual players, which is why it may actually damage the MMO.
I have an Ashes of Creation video in the works too, by the way.
But at the same time, it is making the MMO stand out. In the exact same way, this is why Ghostcrawler's MMO is going for the shard system. They want to be different, and they want to play towards the newly evolved player audience. You know, they are targeting the kids who grew up on Minecraft and Fortnite, and admittedly, that is smart. But you
Ghostcrawler's MMO for MMO enjoyers is aiming for Minecraft players and kids? Huh? I think he grouped Ashes of Creation in that too. I missed that. Huh.
See, all of this is still just one part of this onion. Because on the other side, you have the exact opposite kind of an MMO that has a massive, hungry audience. An audience that wants the most classical kind of MMO you can get. Open world, instance dungeons, gear farming, progression through raid tiers. And right now,
we already have that. We already have that.
Only kind of MMO that does this is Classic WoW, which throughout its first 2 years...
Everything you said is part of retail WoW as well as Elder Scrolls Online, as well as Star Wars The Old Republic, as well as Final Fantasy XIV, as well as Albion Online has all of the things mentioned. All of these things are very common and very on the market already. They're all there. They're all there. This isn't like, and not only are they all there, you have so many different choices. We have sci-fi versions, we have fantasy versions, we have free to play, we have subscription model, we have pay to win. Lost Ark is that. We have so many options of that specific thing. Riot does not need to make a 16th option for that. What?
Years of release absolutely annihilated the MMO market, which could be a proof that the MMO audience is looking for this.
I believe when this released, this got debunked as false, by the way. This isn't real news.
Classic experience, but it may also not be that because nostalgia is a thing. The point is, there is currently nobody
Classic
on the
WoW's
MMO
numbers also
market
dropped
making a traditional
like 90% in the first 2
The only
months.
one that did this was Classic WoW, which was a massive success, but eventually it burned out because it was just a re-release. There was no new content. So yeah, people loved Classic WoW all the way to the end, but eventually it ended. Now thankfully there is a Season of Discovery that is trying new things with this.
Season of Discovery, how did I forget that? It's literally WoW Classic with a new paint job, adding new abilities and new content to the game. There's a living, breathing version of this.
That one is amazing, but it also has its own issues, and that is a whole separate topic. The thing with this is...
We could also say that the Riot MMO, if it was just WoW Classic with a new coat of paint, would be its own thing with its own separate set of issues. Like, that could be a thing too. And that's why they're not doing it.
There is a reason why no one is trying to tackle this side of the market. It's because throughout the 2010s...
I'm going to say the reason I think, and then I'm going to let him say the reason he thinks. The reason nobody's trying to tackle this now is because it's a 20-year-old game that has dated systems with dated combat that are not really exceptional for new game players in a modern gaming era. So they're looking to develop in a different direction that will introduce new players to the MMO genre. Your turn.
Everyone was making traditional MMOs to compete with WoW. And everyone burned because WoW was at its peak at the time. We had Rift, the Warhammer MMO, the Conan MMO, and Wildstar, which...
Conan MMO was action combat, by the way.
Died not only because it was
we played that on
too
Steam,
difficult, but also because it released against the hype of that, and no one wants to fight that.
Warlords of Draenor was literally the biggest drop-off in WoW history.
Anyway,
this is a weird take.
That WoW is not at its peak anymore. Which
I
is
would
why
love if Necrit would let me be on his stream or something and have a conversation at some point.
And this is why, in a lot of cases, WoW players were just waiting for the right MMO so
just to get a different perspective, right?
Because everyone else making MMOs is trying to go away from the traditional formula. And this is why the Riot MMO is in an interesting situation. On one side, you have the massive market gap in the traditional MMOs, which is currently not served by anyone, but on the other side, you have the mass audiences, which are 10 times bigger, but they are harder to please.
There's also a massive content gap in the arcade game systems because they're old and people don't make them anymore. It's kind of the same thing. Maybe it's an extreme example, but it's kind of the same thing.
Which is exactly why all the new MMOs are trying something new. Everyone is trying to hit the next trend. So I'm not saying that one is better than the other, I'm just saying this is gonna be interesting. Now,
the trend right now is gacha MMOs.
It is difficult to say what Riot's strategy is
and
right
Korean
now.
MMOs.
It feels like they started with making a traditional MMO, but internally it simply didn't feel good enough, and so they want to change the genre a bit. Now this could be anything from changing how the progression works, as in maybe you don't even...
I have a very good take on this that we will do after the video, and we're going to actually research it in depth. So in like 12 minutes on stream. So at the end of the reaction, we're going to actually go into what I think the difference is and what they're changing.
Character, maybe progression is just purely gear driven, to the big changes such as the MMO being purely lobby based, closer to something like Warframe, I guess. Which is still scary, because if there is one thing people want to see, it is an open world League of Legends universe experience. There is no way Riot can get rid of that. And with this announcement,
if it's not open world, I agree.
They are making a move that is very hard to pull off. This is a huge challenge, but one that our team of deeply passionate MMO players and game development veterans is incredibly motivated to pursue.
It has to be open
this is
world.
a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, because historically it has been proven that if your developers are excited...
I think open world is a little bit open for interpretation though. I think when we say open world regarding the Riot MMO, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a vast sprawling area. I think it could be, but I'm not saying it has to be that. I think what I'm saying more is that you'll be exploring the world and the landscapes, whether they're like semi-linear or whatever they are, with other people around that you're not necessarily engaging with. That's kind of what I mean when I speak about the Riot MMO. I think it could go other ways, and it could be like fully open world. You can, just massive zones like World of Warcraft. I think it also could be similar to Lost Ark though, where you have, you see hundreds of people in town, and there's, a bunch of people around outside in the world, but it is instanced on some level. But I don't think that's why they did the reset either, though. I don't think they changed that.
About a project, it usually means you are on a good track. And all you need to do is to look at the individuals working on the MMO to see they are all super excited about the project. After which, Trindamir gave us another piece of news that scared a lot of people. But don't worry, you don't have to panic. With this new direction, I'm excited to introduce Fabrice as the new executive producer.
I've changed my thought on Fabrice, by the way.
Fabrice's experience as a player and passion for creating immersive worlds is extraordinary. Having led big projects at Riot, BioWare and EA, he brings a fresh perspective and a shared commitment to excellence that will guide our team as they continue on this difficult journey. Here, of course, everyone jumped the smoking gun of BioWare and
I'll address
EA.
it later.
And I will
later today,
admit,
but later.
You can make some funny memes out of this. But it is not as one-sided as BioWare bad, EA even worse. The truth is, no developer ever wants to make a bad game.
I agree.
When a bad game comes out, 99% of the time, it's because it was rushed out, because the financial
So I'll actually give a quick, Mass Effect is a series that I think is highly thought of, right? And my initial perspective was that this guy has some really good experience leading teams. But as I did some research, I learned that some of those teams were maybe not that great. And the games weren't that great. And I don't want to judge him based off of the downfalls of BioWare and EA, because that's not fair. We agree on that. But I think I can't be like bright-eyed and like super excited about him either, because there isn't anything to look at. There isn't anything to judge. It feels a little bit like a blank slate. And I think the two previous people we have proven excellence in the MMO field, and maybe that led them to making a more traditional MMO. So maybe having someone with a fresh set of eyes who hasn't worked on MMOs could be a good thing. Do we work? I don't think we know. I haven't been able to find anything on that. We're gonna do a little speculation and stuff, and then probably not do much more of that for a little while. It might be like quarterly or once a month, but we're gonna look into it after the video here a little bit.
Wanted to push for earnings. It is never the case that the developers don't care about a game and so they make it bad. You have to remember it goes onto their portfolio. I mean, if you are the lead of a game, do you really want to make a bad game knowing that your face is gonna be on the front of it? Of course you don't.
He got the job at Riot for a reason, right?
When there is a name that is attached to a big corporation.
And I guess more topical too, he didn't lose his job at Riot recently either, so he must be doing something right. Right? It wasn't just random layoffs, right?
Remember that a corporation has a lot of people who are responsible for a lot of questionable decisions that eventually drip down to the games. With that said, there is a reason why people are scared. See, EA is EA. There is so much happening here that nearly every developer in the game industry was involved with EA somehow. From gambling simulators to Star Wars publishing to the hosting of some pretty good live services. The ups and downs are all over the place. So seeing EA in the bio means nothing. The BioWare tag, however, is a bit more interesting. Throughout its history, BioWare released...
Knights of the Old Republic is in my top 5 favorite games of all time. Doesn't hold up well to today's standards, especially if you use the Steam version, but it's one of my all-time favorite games.
Bangers. It was one success after another. And jokingly, internally, the devs called it BioWare magic. They themselves didn't even know why their games were so good. So to a degree, it could have been raw talent, or it could have been luck. But that all crumbled when Mass Effect Andromeda came out, which was followed by Anthem.
Ooh, Anthem, not great. This armor set looks so sick. Am I wrong in saying this? The Mass Effect armor looks so cool.
Came out.
Anthem
which
is bad.
Was followed by Anthem. Anthem became the more infamous one because based on the interviews, the entire game was just mismanaged from the very beginning. The devs didn't really know what kind of a game they were making. And that's all the way to the point the game...
Don't really know what kind of game you're making. Uh-oh. Lack of direction. Uh-oh. And then in charge of the MMO. Uh-oh. That doesn't sound great. He wasn't actually, I don't think he even directly worked on Anthem though, so I'm just memeing. I'm just memeing, but like he didn't actually, I don't think, work on Anthem.
Fake gameplay trailers. I wish I was joking, the interviews about this are hilarious. And thankfully, after a lot of searching, it seems like Fabrice was not on Anthem. So we dodged the bullet there. On the other side, however, Fabrice was the producer on Mass Effect 3, the
Andromeda is not thought of
DLC,
well. 3 is great though.
Mass Effect Andromeda. So, what does this mean? Well, by a pure coincidence, it just so happens to be that yes, I am a bit of a Mass Effect fan. And funnily enough, I know quite a bit
I need more
on this
stuff.
topic. So, despite
I need
its
helmets and
drama with
swords.
the ending, Mass Effect 3 was an absolute banger. And looking back, it reflects on the ratings that are still above.
Should we play Mass Effect 3 on stream at some point? Don't they have like a remastered version? I think we should do that. That could be fun.
90%. Yes, in many ways, Mass Effect 3 was a bit worse than the other two
Every time I die, I just like, thanks Fabrice.
games, but that's only if you compare them to each other. I mean, Mass Effect 2 is considered one of the best games ever made. But looking at gaming in general, Mass Effect 3 is still a big success.
It's a really good
Not to
game.
mention, a really important detail here is that the multiplayer side of Mass Effect 3 was very popular, and I loved it.
Mass Effect 3 had multiplayer? I have 1 and 2. Mass Effect Legendary Edition? What is that? Oh, it's, I could just get the $4.99, whatever.
So given how this multiplayer gameplay relates to...
He was actually, here's the thing is, he was in charge of specifically the multiplayer part of Mass Effect 3. When we were pulling up his interviews, when we first got the news about him, it was all Mass Effect 3 multiplayer stuff and him talking about that. So he was like the front man for Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which is interesting. Something we should definitely check out. Also, all of this armor looks cool. It also looks a little bit like PlanetSide 2 armor, but it looks cool.
MMOs, this is actually awesome news. After this, there is also the Omega DLC, which, yes, compared to all the other DLCs, this one was seen as just okay. There was a lot of shooting, not too much awesome story. But lastly, Fabrice is credited for Mass Effect Andromeda. And out of everything, this is the only one where I would just...
I love this stuff, I'll be honest. I think this is hilarious. If this happens in my game, it will make me laugh and I will be happy. And unless it bricks the game, I'm having a good time. Like if I'm laughing and I'm happy and I'm like, don't do it on purpose. It's not funny when it's on purpose. It's also not funny when the entire game, I'm looking at you, Starfield, does it. But when it's a random thing like this, it's hilarious to me.
Being worried. But thankfully, it is also not that one-sided. Because again, compared to the other Mass Effect games, yes, this absolutely was not a great one. But on the gaming market, it is still an above average game, which with a lethal
I think just
dose
compared to
of
Mass Effect
copium,
3, probably not as good.
can be seen as a success. The thing is, the main issue with Andromeda is how rushed out it was. The content it had was decent, it had some good moments in there, but it had
they
some
fixed it
pieces
since?
missing because Andromeda was pushed out too early because of financials. Again, we know this from the interviews. Which also means that yes, Fabrice being the producer of this game doesn't necessarily mean he has to be responsible for the shortcomings. It may simply mean that they didn't get enough time. But unfortunately, there is no way we will get to learn about this. Which
We could
means
ask
that
him, but
when it comes to this big rant about BioWare and EA, it literally doesn't mean anything and it may as well not be mentioned. All this means...
You know what's so sad is that all this news was 2 days after my birthday. This is like not the birthday present I was wanting. This is not what I asked for.
Is that Fabrice has experience with leading bigger projects, which, all things considered, sounds fine. So next, Tryndamere also gave us some context on the reset of the MMO. We started laying the groundwork for this pivot some time ago, and over the last year, under VJ Tucker's management, we built key components on the technical foundation to create the kind of ambitious game we're talking about.
So this is a little bit where my conspiracy theory starts, is that the reset happened. Well, we're gonna go down this rabbit hole after this. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be so good. But VJ took over for the reset. Specifically for the reset. It was a technical reset. He stated that. VJ was there in charge for a year during the reset, and he is the technical director before and after he was EP. So VJ was in charge of the technical reset of the game. We're going so much deeper too. Oh, just wait.
And that he'll
It's
be
so
part
good.
of the game leadership team going forward as our technical director. First of all, thank God VJ is still on the team. That is quite a charismatic guy. But interestingly
He's also
enough,
just a
we can
Chad.
already pick up some details from this. Obviously, when I was at Riot last year, I signed an NDA, so I can't really tell you anything besides what was shown in the interview. But since Tryndamere mentioned that this pivot was being pushed out over the last year, it means that when all the different MMO creators were invited to Riot headquarters, which we know about because of all the pictures on Twitter, it seems like that was while the reset was already happening.
Yep.
So it is possible that Riot invited everyone there so they could get some kind of feedback to make sure they are going in the right direction. In this case, this reset would absolutely make sense. And it should spark confidence that Riot is not going in blind. Also,
which makes me question his whole theory on the classic MMO aspect, because if he did see it, I mean, maybe he's just it's a diversion tactic or something, but like if he saw the gameplay, I don't know why he would go down that rabbit hole, right? If it's not going to be a classic one and he's worried about it not being a classic one. It almost contradicts itself.
as I mentioned, this doesn't mean that the MMO is starting from zero again.
Obviously.
Since they are laying down the technical foundation.
I think everything he saw is still actually in place. So I think they probably saw some quest design stuff. I think they probably saw some oh wait, the quest designer left too. Ooh, that's interesting. We'll go over that. I think he saw some artwork, some concept art. I think they saw some models of and like style of armor and different things. And then they also probably did like a quick like, hey, what do you think if armor worked in this way, or weapons worked in this way, or weapons lended themselves to skills, or skills were leveled up, or blah, 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 blah. They probably asked them a bunch of questions and different theories on stuff. It would be nice for them to get some people who aren't MMO players asking questions about the MMO too, and not just like Asmongold and tips out, but
means they are focusing more on restructuring the core gameplay. If they already had some assets in the world, it would likely mean those assets would still be in the game.
Yep.
As well as the base systems, such as basic movement.
No, Duppy, I think you'd be good. You hate MMOs.
I mean,
if they can make an MMO that you like,
they are trying something new artistically. So whatever they were experimenting on should still be in the game. So from 0 to 100, if before Riot was at 20 with the MMO, now they went back to 10, which is...
Those are all made up numbers, but it is good to know that, like, when you do a reset on a game, it doesn't mean you go to 0% of progress. It's not a linear progression model like that. You don't go to 60% done and say, hey, I want to redo the combat. Now we're at 0. You redo the combat. And I mean, a great example of this recently is Throne and Liberty, whom their combat was god awful. In a beta release too. So this wasn't even an alpha. This was a beta test. And they redid their combat and had it available for launch and ready as a much better combat system. And that was it only took them 6 months, I think, to fix it up. 2XKO had something similar. Well, I mean, they did a pretty hard reset on 2XKO. I think twice, kind of. One, it was initially it wasn't a Riot game, right? So they kind of reset a little bit from bringing it over to Riot. And then I think further down the line, they also decided, oh, it's not that fun. We're going to do another reset while they were already in the Runeterra world. They did a secondary reset to reset the combat and make the combat more fun. But I mean, fucking knock on wood, they don't do another reset on the MMO. I mean, technically, I think this would be the 3rd or 4th reset on the MMO. It's the first like public reset, but they have done background resets that they have confirmed. So, hey,
still not 0. After which Tryndamere continues.
The point is they're not at 0% on the Riot MMO. They're probably around, I would say 20%. But I mean, after 4 years of development, that's still 2029 plus release date.
Funny line. Resetting our development path also means that we will be going dark for a long time.
What
likely
changed?
Several years.
What's changed? They've been dark since the beginning.
What do you mean going dark? You never went light. Let me translate this for you. Nothing changed. This silence will help provide space for the team.
That's what I kept saying in Discord, all the time. Just nothing changed. I just kept repeating that that day that news released and y'all wanted to go doomer in the Discord. I was just like, literally nothing changed. Stop it. Bad. Stop. Nothing's changed. I mean, literally VJ's not even gone. He's still there working on the same thing. They just don't have a technological like main thing right now.
To focus on
probably good. It means they're done with like the tech stuff. I mean, then you're never done with it. But
and anticipation that surrounds new information. But we ask for your trust during this silent phase. Remember,
they're going silent for a year or two to build out the game, and then they're going to hot drop the fuck out of it. And by hot drop, I mean like probably like 2 concepts art and maybe a 15-second video, if we're lucky.
No news is good news, as it means we are hard at work, pouring our hearts and souls into making something that we hope you'll love. And here's the thing. Here Tryndamere asks for our trust during this silent period. And the fact is, they kinda earned it. Valorant was developed in full silence, only being revealed during the 10th anniversary. Project L was a...
Here's the funny thing, right? Here's the funny thing. I'm not betting on it at all. And here's where we go cope. For those of you who aren't aware, we have it on the microphone. But they could go silent for 2 years. It'd be 2026, and they could say, "Hey, we've built out the world now. We want to start getting some people in for beta." And then 27, 28 super coping, but hey, it's
announced, then went silent, and then they came back with an entire new art direction and new gameplay. Arcane was announced during the 10th anniversary, then went silent for a year, and then broke all the statistics on Netflix.
We don't know how far they are. Not to mention the fact that they have had art design that they've been chipping away at. They have artists on the team for 4 years now, right? Those 3D artists are consistently pumping out art and assets. And that takes a long time. So if they're still going to utilize that and they didn't reset the art, which I doubt they did, I don't think they would have put VJ in charge of the technical direction and reset. Like putting VJ in charge of the reset as a technical director doesn't scream to me that they reset the art style. I think they found an art style they like and they're going forward with it. This reset was technical based off of what Trin has said and just based off of pretty simple speculation.
The truth is, with enough time, Riot produces bangers. And that even accounts for League. You may think that it is a game, but there is a reason why millions of players still play it.
True.
So if there is one thing Riot is good at, it is making things in silence. Which sucks because
that's what we gotta watch out for.
Anything.
There's a second reset.
Eventually, it should work out. So overall, what did we learn today? We learned that nothing
Everything's
in our
over,
lives
cry
will
more.
change, and you just wasted your time watching this video. I mean, it means that
Never has he said anything more true. Nothing has changed and you have wasted your time watching this video.
instead of our children playing this game, it's gonna be our grandchildren doing it. I mean, they said that they will go silent for several years. So, we can make an educated guess.
2 years.
After the
2 to 3.
15th anniversary, the next one in line is the 20th, which would be 2029. So I would expect some kind of an announcement on...
They don't necessarily have to release information only at a League of Legends anniversary too. They could release at, I don't know, Riot Games anniversary or any other number of reasons because they're ready to talk about it potentially. It's the company anniversary, I thought. No, it's League of Legends anniversary, I believe. Am I losing my mind? League of Legends anniversary. I don't know how to type. 10th anniversary event was on October. Celebratory group of events that happened. Celebration of the 10th birthday of League of Legends release. 2026 is their company's anniversary. Yeah. So like, bro, like, we're not going to get any massive information for the next couple years, but like the funny thing too is Trin also said last year when Ghostcrawler was like leaving, it was basically like, hey, we got a long road ahead of us and we're working hard. We're not going to talk much though. Every 2 to 3 years, I guess, technically, because they're staggered a little bit, but yeah. Why don't they release it at the Legends of Runeterra anniversary? Like
the 20th anniversary with maybe a bit of a reveal, with the potential release of the game being around 2032 or 2033. Which is still ridiculous considering that we are in 2024. In a way,
yeah, I'm not waiting 10 more years. I'd have to kill myself.
Pivot, especially if they felt like the original vision wasn't going to work.
So I need to work out more.
This kind of pivot is exactly what killed many different games in the past. One excellent example of this would be Duke Nukem Forever. That game became infamous for noodling around for so long it lost its original vision. And in a similar way, Riot is risking losing the original vision of the game if they make the wrong move. So if they feel like it's not working out, it is always better to make the pivot. And you know what? I would rather see this kind of a delay instead of yet another yellow sorry box. Then again, I just hope that eventually when the MMO comes out, it is still gonna be some kind of an MMO and not a lobby simulator. And yes, all of this still arrived with one real
complains about lobby simulator, plays League of Legends.
Thing. the one thing that is going to affect me massively. I can't make videos on Riot's MMO anymore.
Oh,
What am I gonna do?
it's okay. I'm gonna still do it. All right. Well, I think aside from that weird classic WoW stuff, that was a pretty good video.